Welcome back, fellow football fanatics. It's College Football with Sam, and joining us is once again Baldfather Bets. Before we continue on with our topic, really about recruiting and NIL, just make sure you look up his channel name, Baldfather Bets, and give him a like on his recent video talking about some potential college football playoff parlays, some national championship odds. Just check it out, like the video, subscribe to his channel, hit the notification bell, and if you can't find his channel, the link to it is just going to be down in a pinned comment in the comment section. Anyway, just do those things. How are you doing today? And what are your thoughts on the recent NIL news?
Yeah, doing well. Thanks for having me on, man. So first off, I think you and I can take a little bit of a victory lap, right, on the last video that we did,
We knew
because
it.
it went down exactly like we said. The thing that's so crazy is they didn't even wait to get sued. They pulled it before they even got sued because they knew. I mean, any true legal advice they were getting, they knew, like, yeah, you're going to lose this lawsuit in court. So they and for people who don't know or understand, essentially what they did is they reversed the clause that differentiates between a affiliated NIL program and a non-affiliated NIL program. So now affiliated NIL programs are perfectly fine to operate the way that they were, and they can offer essentially whatever they feel is fair market value. And in a world without a collective bargaining agreement, fair market value is whatever someone's willing to pay you. So that's like, there is no restriction on that. We're very much now merging essentially economic systems with football. This is a capitalist economic system, and in that you're free to gain, you're free to earn and gain as much money as you can get. So there is no way for them to have a restriction on how much a player can earn, on what a player's worth is, if someone is willing to pay it, because that is then their fair market value. So it was really, really interesting to see how quick it happened. They didn't even wait for this August 1st thing where they said the commission was going to strike down, 100 plus deals. They backed off of it very, very quick. So that's, I think, clear. I was really surprised that there were some people, and not just people that are, fans or something, some people with like respectable opinions who are saying, no, it's going to hold. Like, it'll be fine. The NCAA is allowed to operate different from that because they don't have uh, employees. Players aren't employees, but if you really got into the weeds of it, like, that's the exact reason why they weren't going to be able to have it.
Exactly.
Yeah, have it hold up, because they aren't employees. So like this, you if someone is willing to give someone $7 million to do a commercial for their car dealership, like, you cannot restrict that. That's open, that's fair, unless they have agreed to let someone represent them in a collective bargaining, and they've agreed to certain restrictions and rules within that. So that's the first part of it. Then the second thing, I guess, is the executive order, right? That came out. I'm also surprised at the amount of people who think, who don't understand how an executive order works. Like, they don't understand that nothing changed. A lot of people who don't understand how executive orders work. So you really, in order for this to have any sort of teeth, it would still have to be passed through the House and through the Senate and actually be a law. Um, the Senate will not pass something that essentially has any sort of restriction on antitrust or anything like that. There's just if you look, again, not to get political, but if you look at the current political makeup of the Senate, they would not get enough votes for something that would restrict antitrust. Nor do I really think we should set a precedent of allowing antitrust to really be restricted in sort of any entity. But
Yeah, that sounds shaky.
it sounds shaky, because once you do, you can be like, well, this is unique, it's the college football. But once you do it once, then you're opening up the door for it to be done more times. Uh, the the second thing about the executive order is, if you've read it, it doesn't actually really do anything. It just says that there's no pay for play, but that doesn't impact essentially an NIL deal where someone agrees to something for a legitimate business purpose. And if you agree to something in which is a legitimate business purpose, again, that is, I will be paying you X amount of dollars so you can sign autographs, or I will be paying you Y amount of dollars so you can be in a car dealership. And there's other ways that they can structure this where they can say like all of the entire offensive line group for Ohio State will take place in this X commercial, or they will be on this billboard for this product, and then pay all of them a large amount of money. And that large amount of money will come from the NIL collective that will be funded by all the boosters. And then the local businesses and companies will be a part of that, in which then they will be in their commercials, their autograph signings, etc., so that they check the box for a legitimate business purpose. So, A, the executive order, if it is tried to be enforced and to take away an opportunity from a student athlete, will not hold up. It does not have teeth because it's not an actual law, and then it will get shot down in the judicial system once it's challenged. And then B, it didn't actually restrict anything in terms of the way the system is working now. It just says that there's no pay for play, which means like outside of the revenue sharing model, Texas can't be like, hey, we're also going to give you $6 million on top of it from our school funding. Like that's really the only thing that it says, which no one was doing that anyway. So like
it's just saving face
it,
essentially.
and I mean, the name of it is pretty clear what it was trying, what the intent of it was. And it is crazy how many people I think are, I guess, falling for it would be the best way to describe it. And then obviously because it involves Trump, now it's taken a whole political side of it that we don't even need to get into that. But I'm surprised at how many college football fans and stuff are falling for the this now trumps what came out a few days before it, and that they're backing off their restrictions when it comes to affiliated NIL groups. So, very long story short is they have opened Pandora's box when it comes to allowing players to make money off their name, image, and likeness, and any attempt to restrict it without a collective bargaining agreement will fail. It's very clear the way antitrust laws are written in the U.S. They will not be able to do that. So until they all bite the bullet, which they don't want to, and treat the athletes as paid employees, and then the athletes agree to unionize. That's the other part of this that people like don't quite like. They have to agree to enter the union together and then negotiate a CBA. We're not getting anywhere from what the current normal and standard is.
And some of them wouldn't want to do that because again, you're restricting payment by doing that, and players and their parents and agents it'll be like,
Yes.
hey, this is all well and good,
Yes.
but not for me.
There also is a question of legality of can they unionize, because so then they have to be treated as employees, right? So then to be an employee, you have to get direct payment from who your employer is. So then you're entering a situation where, are we considering them a student? Are we considering them an employee, or are we considering them something that's both? Like when you're a grad student at a university and you also work in a research lab for that university. We're getting into very nitpicky terms that then can really determine if they are even allowed to unionize. That's a whole other thing. And like you said, clear all those boxes, then you come to the point of, do they want to unionize? So I think if they cleared all those boxes, the NCAA and the conferences could put them in a situation where they had no choice but essentially to unionize. Like that is possible. It's with like the NFL. If the NFL players didn't unionize, like they would be much taken more advantage of by the NFL than if they had the NFL Players Association. Not that the NFL Players Association always makes the right decisions. Look at the scandal that they just got into, but
Yeah.
they are much more powerful together in that versus not. So it's, again, we are a long ways away from having a collective bargaining agreement that then actually allows you to put some financial restriction and control in what a lot of people were referring to as the college football salary cap. We're a long ways away from that. And until we get there, teams need to be operating kind of the way Lane Kiffin said at SEC Media Days, where he's like, "Yeah, we're just ignoring the all the restrictions that come out because if you look at it, it's not going to hold." I,
Yeah.
say what you will about Lane Kiffin, but one of the things that's very nice about him is he's quite matter of fact when he gets in front of a microphone.
Yeah, the whether it's like the frustrating game management of last year or the fact that he's always on Twitter, he
Hmm.
just says what he wants, does what
Hmm.
he wants. He runs the ship. How long do you think how long do you think it'll take? Like how far away are we? Like a decade? 5 years? More?
Five, five, 5 to 10 years. Yeah, 5 to 10 years.
Holy
So
cow.
they're gonna hit a point. You're gonna see it. One of the things that colleges really have to manage right now is because the NIL thing is new, and this is very similar to what the NFL had to manage with rookie contracts. Because NIL is new, each year, kind of the asking price for a player is going up and up and up and up. So it can really create a toxic locker room if unproven freshman comes in and is making more money than junior or senior at that same position because the market value for the freshman went up and they signed that whatever their NIL deal was 2 years ago, and they haven't seen the same amount of increase to that. That can be a very toxic situation. So teams are very much having to manage right now what is the landscape of who is making all what money. And if Jeremiah Smith comes in day one and is making, as much money as a junior wide receiver, that's probably fine because that junior wide receiver is going to see it in the practice field like that. If you have the 175th ranked recruit come in and he's making more money than maybe not your all American or all conference, but your 3 year starting left guard, then you're getting into a little bit of a toxic situation. So they're having to manage that right now. There could come a point to where the tipping scale, like the asking price for freshman incoming players is so high that like that is at a situation to where they cannot manage it. And I think that would kind of force their hand to do something. So the NFL, um, I think Sam Bradford was the last first round pick to get a contract under the old CBA to where rookies just, there was no structured salary based on where you were picked in each round. And it was actually getting to the point to where teams were saying, unless there is a generational talent, we don't want the first pick in the NFL draft because of how much money you have to give to that person.
Oh wow.
So I think it was, if I remember correctly, Sam Bradford was the last under the old, and he got like back then like a 70 some odd $1 million contract as a rookie, maybe broke 80. And then the next year Cam Newton was the first and under the new CBA where it was restricted and he got like 30 some odd at the time. Um, so you're you're looking at a situation where you may have to do something like that to restrict how much the incoming players are getting compared to veterans who've been on the team for a long time. Like it's not a big deal for like a Caleb Downs or a Jeremiah Smith or an Anthony Hill or someone like that, because they're all Americans, so they're performing at a rate to where like just to retain that player the next year, you had to pay them a significant amount of money. But it is a big deal for your, like I said, your third year starter who is a valuable part of the team, but is not maybe not all conference or all American or anything like that.
Yeah, you bring in like a good linebacker recruit. He's just great, good, not all American, and he's making more than the senior free safety who's won you games and isn't all conference. Like that would be
Exactly.
frustrating.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and
Like Michael Taft probably doesn't have the highest NIL contract, right? Because he's not, no one like Michael Taft, he will get drafted in the NFL, but he's not a first round pick. Like he doesn't have the size, all that stuff that's needed. Jonah Williams was like a top 10 recruit at safety in the country last year. He came into Texas. Texas had to manage that Jonah Williams isn't making more money than a senior leader, Michael Taft, right? In that situation.
Yeah, and Texas can do that while recruiting well because Texas has a lot of money.
Yeah.
It'll probably get to a point where you you can correct me if you think I'm off base, but I kind of think it gets to a point where you see, like, whether it's Texas or Oregon or these schools that have a lot of money, they begin dramatically pulling away because they're
Yeah.
the only ones that can pay the incoming freshmen and the seniors to manage the locker room. And these other schools don't have enough money to balance it. And that's when there's just this massive gap that appears.
There is a reason, two things. And talking to this to what I said, I guarantee you there are some Texas Tech offensive linemen who are pissed off about how much Felix Ojo is getting right now coming in as an unproven player, and one who has some film that would make you question a few things. Um, so that's the situation that you can create that's on the negative side. And then there's a reason that Penn State doesn't have as much funds this recruiting cycle because they are going all in to win a national championship this year, and keeping that team together used up a lot of what they have because they had to pay to retain all those players. So they don't have the same war chest to work with currently. And they have a fine recruiting class. They're in the teens. It's not like it's a disaster or anything like that, but they're still operating um, slightly behind the eight ball uh, because of how much they had to pay to retain this current team.
Yeah, for sure. Under well, they're not really new rules. It's just the same as it ever was, but with a lot more language. Who do you think benefits the most moving forward in this new landscape?
Um, I think I think USC is in a very unique position under the current way the rules are written. I think Texas is in a unique position. Um, I think Oregon is as well due to the amount of money that they have, but they're not quite as in a positive position as USC or Texas because Eugene doesn't have the same market value as Los Angeles or Austin. Um, I mean, no one has the market value of Los Angeles, but Austin's, I think, the 10th largest city in America now, or something like that. So it's getting up there. I think Ohio State is in a positive position with this because Columbus is large enough and it's the capital of Ohio. Um, and then I think after that, you're looking at a next tier down, and then you're looking probably at a school like Miami, you know, who Miami has a lot of star power in the city. Miami has a lot of celebrities in the city. Miami's a draw point. Um, don't know if Miami has the same backing funds as a USC, Oregon, Texas, or Ohio State. So that's where they would have to kind of come up in terms of gathering the money. But that's where I think you're going to see teams really kind of pull away. And it's been interesting. It's been interesting to see the recruiting tactics, right, from the teams. This recruiting cycle has been really, really interesting. So when the cycle first started, the teams who were trying to get ahead of what they were predicting the House settlement to be, right? So USC just maximizing their class all the way to 30 recruits, like, and it was like February it was like signing day last year, and they already had like 30 recruits for the 2026 class, right? Um, then you had people who were just kind of going about their normal way. Then the House settlement happened. Then you had teams that we'll use the Lane Kiffin side, we're completely ignoring it. Then you had teams who were kind of playing in the middle. I would say Texas was one of those for sure. And then you had teams that were following it like all the way through because they thought it was going to stay. Um, Now some of the schools I think that were following it all the way through are having to play a little bit of catch up, and I do think you're going to see a higher amount of flips. Like some of these recruiting battles that say Ohio State lost out on, I'm sure they haven't lost contact with those players. And I would imagine you would see them flip a few of them to them. Um, some of these recruiting classes that are top 8 and they only have 20, 21 players committed, I think you're going to see them flip some of the ones that they lost out on in the June, July commitments now that they can truly move forward. And then you have, I'll use Baylor as an example, universities who targeted certain players who cannot play with the big boys across the board for every single player, but they targeted certain players and they said, we are not losing out for that guy. So Baylor with Carlton, for an example, like
Yeah.
in most worlds, he's not committing to Baylor, but Baylor said, no, we will match whatever the offer is from any other school because we want him. Um, Texas Tech's a little bit of a different situation because they're operating with a larger war chest than a Baylor is right now, but they did the same thing when it came to Ojo. They said, no, we're not. Like, we are not losing him. We are going to get him. It's going to be a big splash for us. But I think for some of these larger schools that do have the war chest and some of the panicking from the fans, it's been a little much. Like Ohio State's going to be just fine in recruiting. I was telling the Texas fans, Texas is going to be just fine in recruiting. And I would say the same thing for a lot of these other programs that you're seeing in that 15 to 8 range, and they're kind of all, you know, like what are we going to do? And I also would say look at the size of the class. If the size of if you're at 18 to 21 kids right now, you're there. There's a reason they're at 18 to 21 because they plan on adding 4 to maybe 8 more kids as the season goes on. I actually think it's always smart in recruiting to leave yourself a little bit of room for those senior risers, right? Like recruiting rankings and databases and people who do it for a living. There's so much data that they have to process that they kind of make their mind up on a kid mainly in his junior season. And there are some kids who then really excel in their senior season. And there's a lot of these schools that, especially the ones that have the super big recruiting networks, and they have a lot of people on their recruiting staff that are following these kids into their senior season and saying, yes, he took the neck development step. He grew 3 inches. He put on the 25 pounds, whatever it is, and we're going to offer that kid. And maybe they're ranked lower because the recruiting evaluations on 247 ESPN, whatever, made up their mind on them when they were a junior and didn't then reevaluate to them as they were a senior.
Yeah, absolutely. Most schools are in that lower 20s range right now. I know Ohio State, Texas, and I think even Michigan all have 21 commits.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon's class is still pretty small, but they got, I think, a lot of good O-line commits, and they have the highest quality class. It's similar with LSU. Below 20, but in terms of average rank per recruit, they're like both really high.
My
It's
concern with
interesting.
Oregon, though, is they signed a really small class last year.
That's
So
true.
if they're ever going to get away from needing to rely on the portal, and again, you want to use the portal as a luxury, you don't want to have to rely on it. And if they're going to get away from that, they are going to need to start bringing in a 25 kid class, right? I think they had 16 last year, 15 or 6, and they're sitting
Yeah,
at 15 right now. Like you're playing with fire a little bit there because then you're at that point, like you can't fill out your whole roster with your recruits. So then you do have to bring in kids from the portal, and Oregon can do that. Right? Like Oregon can outpay everyone, but maybe 2 or 3 schools for a kid in the portal. But it's what if the portal's thin at the position that you need that year? What if you're then thin in terms of depth at a certain position, especially defensive line? You
what
know how
if you
much
get
I like.
hurt? Like, what
Yeah,
if
what
your
if you
key
get hurt?
player gets
Exactly.
dinged up?
So I mean that's it. Like Oregon is in a position right now where if they lose one of those offensive tackles, they're really going to struggle at tackle for this season, right? Like they brought in 2 guys in the transfer portal who seem like they're going to be solid starters, but the depth behind them is really not there. And I think that's one of the differences that you have between an Oregon and Ohio State right now in terms of Oregon needing to take the next step to actually overcome Ohio State as the top program in the Big Ten. And I know that's been a topic of debate, But until they do that, I don't really see, even with Oregon having more money in recruiting, I don't see them taking that next step to overpass it. Because you can say what you will about Ohio State in terms of how they recruited on the offensive line recently, which hasn't been great, but it isn't like they're lacking numbers of players there. They do
Right.
have depth behind their starters. Same thing with Texas. Like I said, on defensive line, like I look at defensive line a little bit differently. Most people rank like the top defensive lines in the country based on who the starters are. And that's great. Like Florida has a phenomenal starting defensive line. I like defensive lines that can rotate 9 guys in because they stay fresh all the time. And your All American starter who's played 50 snaps in the fourth quarter isn't as good as a defensive line that has 8 capable starters that they're rotating in and are staying fresh consistently. And the only way you do that is to get numbers. And so until Oregon can actually increase the numbers that they're bringing in, they're going to be a little bit behind in that depth range.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because they still have a lot of top 100 players they're targeting. I'm curious to see, like, if they land all of them, that changes things, or if they land
Mm-hmm.
most of them. And yeah, I mean they're young this year too. They'll probably bring back everyone for 26 or close to everyone. So it's an interesting story to follow. But you wanted to come on to talk about a team who has championship aspirations, but
Yep.
right now is nowhere near Ohio State or Oregon or Texas or heck, even the team they play in week 2. They're not even
Yep.
close to them in recruiting right now. So what's happening with Oklahoma? Like,
Yeah, and I want to preface this one too. So I think at this point, most of your viewers know that I went to the University of Texas. I'm a Texas grad. I'm a Texas fan. I like the Oklahoma football program. So I will self-admittedly tell you, I hate Texas A&M. I want them to go 0-12 every year, and I want to beat them 100-0. I don't care if the game's not interesting because I like despise their program and their university and College Station. But I like it when OU is good. Like I like it when the Red River rivalry is good. I like it when that game in Dallas is 2 top 5 teams playing each other. Like those 08, 09 years when it was Sam Bradford versus Colt McCoy and stuff like that. Like those were phenomenal. Like that is OU Texas at its best. What has happened? And I think no one is messing up recruiting right now as bad as OU is. What is happening with that program right now is absolutely insane. So they are the only college football program in the country right now who is operating in a hierarchy level to where the GM is on a higher level than the head coach. So, for example, like Texas has a GM on their staff. Steve Sarkisian hired said GM, and he is ahead of him in the hierarchy level. Ohio State has one. All the big programs have one now. Georgia has one. Alabama, all that stuff. Um, but they operate essentially underneath the discretion and the decision of the head coach, and they're operating a lot what to do with player personnel, recruiting, all of that, player acquisitions. Like that's a lot of what they're doing. OU is the only team that has really taken the NFL model to where the GM is on top of the head coach. So like Nagy, their GM, he was at SEC Media Days. He's the only GM who came to SEC Media Days. There were no GMs at Big Ten Media Days. Like no one else is operating like this.
yeah, it's weird.
It's very strange. He has publicly stated, and I understand what he said, but he's just wrong. He has publicly stated that they are going after value recruiting. So what they are doing is they are looking for 2 and 3 stars, lower ranked 4 stars, who they feel they can get value in, so they can pay them less money, and they can bring them in and develop them, and then have a good school. And the comparison that he made to was the NFL. So in the NFL, 56% of NFL rosters are made up of guys drafted in the 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, 7th round, or undrafted free agents. Over 30% of teams are made up of undrafted free agents. But there's a reason for that. The reason for that is the pay scale that you bring them in under the salary cap. You're paying more money to the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd round guys. So the threshold in which they have to meet to then get their second contract and stay on your team is higher than the threshold that a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, or an undrafted free agent needs to meet because you're paying them less money and they take up less of your salary cap. That doesn't work like that in college. And also, it isn't like the NFL teams just give away their first, second, and third round draft picks and then only draft in the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round and
Yeah.
take on undrafted free agents. They still take those guys in. It's just the threshold for them to stay there is higher than the threshold that it is for like a fifth rounder. Just like though the threshold to make the team during training camp is a lot higher for a fifth rounder than it is for a first rounder because they've invested certain amounts of money in them. The idea that OU is stepping away, first of all, the idea that OU is a bargain program is absurd. Like
That is crazy.
they may not have as much money as Texas or Ohio State or Texas A&M, but they have a lot more money than most other programs around.
Yeah.
And so the idea that they're a bargain program and that they're going to essentially try and be like an Oklahoma State where they take in 3 stars all the time and they have superior development and then they're able to get the most out of them and be able to compete in the SEC is absolutely crazy. And since they've gone with this model, their recruiting is horrendous. So you look at the previous classes that they had when Venables was actually at the helm of recruiting, and he was the one who made the final decisions on player acquisitions. His first year there, 2 years ago, they had the eighth ranked class in 247 composite, and last year they had the 17th class in 247 composite. Right now, I think they're at 39,
Yeah.
or maybe 39 in 247 composite, and they're being out recruited by the likes of like Rutgers. So it's 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 not working, and they should go back to letting Venables do the recruiting the way he was doing it before. And if they have a bad season this year, Venables will surely get fired. But then the next question is, when you're looking at the recruiting, at what point do you say, yeah, we need to fire our GM because this isn't working and we need to go back to a model where the head coach actually has that CEO responsibility over the team. And then the last thing with the recruiting. OU is dominant when they can correctly recruit the DFW area. So Dallas-Fort Worth is as important to OU as any region is to any school. So the number one hotbed for college football recruiting currently is Atlanta. Number two is DFW. If they are not able to actually come in and recruit DFW, and they have 3 players on their recruiting class right now from the DFW area, OU's recruiting class should be made up of about somewhere between 40 to 50% of kids from Dallas-Fort Worth because it's such a hotbed for them. And if you are going to get a 3-star that you are able to turn, that's probably one of the best places to go because there's so many power schools in high school recruiting in that area that churn out just the correct size, the people who've been coached the right way, the correct speed, all those things. So it's very sad, and unless they make a pretty significant change to what they're doing right now with their philosophy and their recruiting, it's going to take them probably 5 to 10 years to recover from this. And that link, and I'll give him the credit for it, where Colin Cowherd said OU is the next Nebraska, he's going to be 100% correct if they don't make a change in this.
Yeah, that's it's like what you said. If you're going to do that, and I mentioned this on my episode talking about recruiting storylines where I even brought up Oklahoma because I thought that was crazy. I still think it's crazy. If you're going to recruit lower caliber guys, you do it out of a state like Texas where there's just so much high school football being played, so much investment, so much players, and it's in the South, so the players are bigger, faster, stronger. That's where you do it. But I just pulled this up out of curiosity, the 247 Sports recruiting rankings for 2026. In the original 10-team Big 12, so after Nebraska left and after Colorado left, they would be ranked 6th right now in recruiting. Kansas is ahead of them. TCU, Baylor, Texas
It's
Tech,
insane.
and Texas are all ahead of them. It's crazy.
And if you look at they don't have a whole lot of other like high ranked targets that
No.
they're going after right now either. Like they have Jay Cruel, and they're probably going to lose him. Like they were leading on him, and he keeps delaying his decision further and further back, which is giving Ole Miss and Texas like more ground in that recruiting. So it's sad. And again, the the root cause of it is they have given the final say on player acquisition to the GM rather than to the head coach, and it's the only power school that is operating that way. And they have to change that. They cannot. And what my concern for them is OU operated with what I would say is the most consistent and the best athletic director for 2 decades. One of the reasons why OU was able to beat Texas, even though Texas had so much more money and talent, and they were higher than them in the 2000s and in the 2010s, was they had so much consistency at the top, and everyone trusted Castiglione's direction. They don't have that, and I feel there's a void in terms of someone who's overseeing this and can step in and say, no, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to operate with the GM having more power than the head coach, because they're void of an AD right now. And if they keep going down this path, like I said, they're setting themselves up in a situation to where it's going to take them several years, 5 probably to 10, to actually truly recover from it whenever the next person comes in and has to clean up this mess. But if you're a head coach right now, how attractive to you is the OU job, knowing that you don't have full control over it? You have to report to a GM if Venables is fired at the end of this year.
That's damning. That's
like why would Rhett Lashley leave SMU to go to OU right now if that's the situation?
There's
no
no
reason.
point.
There's no point.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no point.
Yeah, right now they're 11th in SEC recruiting. 11th. How are you going to compete with the league, especially when the league just gifted you 2 insane schedules?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to try and placate you. That's the job for them to do with Alabama, Georgia, and Texas, and they didn't even do it to Georgia last year or this year.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
That's just. I mean, people know me as a Michigan fan who has like this affection for Michigan State and Ohio State, and I like them to be good. And it's been very sad when Michigan State recently has been a awful team that can't put together really anything of competence. And I also like when Ohio State lost to Missouri in the Cotton Bowl, I was kind of sad because it looked pathetic and it was boring. And ultimately, thankfully, Day's a good and elite coach, and he has them in a moving direction. But like, where would you, before we close this out, where would you peg Oklahoma? Like you said when you were asking the rhetorical question of how attractive would the job be, like where do you think that would peg? How low?
I'm highly concerned, and it's so great. 2 years ago, you would have pegged it in the top 10. You would have, and you would have been, yeah, they're not top 5, but they're somewhere in that 6 to 10 range. And they're entering territory now with how they have it set up, and given the fact that if you take the head coaching job, you do not have full control over your player acquisition in your program. Like if I'm Eli Drinkwitz, I'm not leaving Missouri to come coach so I mean, I think they're outside the top 20 at this point.
Oh wow.
Like, I think they're outside the top 20.
So at this point, unless they get rid of Nagy, you're looking at G5 coaching hunting,
Yes.
or maybe
Yes.
coordinators.
Yes.
But then again, if I were Andy, I mean, maybe I'm being hyperbolic here, but if I were Andy Kotelnicki, why would I take, like, even if they offered it, why would I take that instead of trying to weigh other options? Like, if you're going to be that handicapped in recruiting, in the Big Ten, it would be different because you have enough teams with low talent to where if you can out-develop, you'll win 8-9 games, or
Exactly.
even you can even do what Indiana did and almost and win 11. You can't do that in the SEC. It's impossible.
You're gonna damage your career if you go there under the current restrictions that they're under, because you cannot compete in the SEC. You will get hit with a brutal schedule. In minimum, they do in the SEC, it's a 2-year cycle, right? Where you play the same teams 2 years. So you're going to get hit with a brutal schedule, a minimum of 4 out of 6 years every single time. So you're going to get to a point where you're just trying to make a bowl game, and like that's not the standard at OU. That's not like OU is for people maybe like who are young, like who don't. OU is the bluest of blue bloods. OU is a much bluer blood than Texas is. For people who like truly don't understand the history of college football, OU is in a Notre Dame, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State category of blue blood. In fact, that probably is the top five. In any, I'm not going to say the order, but if you're truly looking at who's the bluest of the blue, it probably is Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Alabama, and OU.
Yeah.
And so for this to be happening to them, it's 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 actually it's shocking. Yeah.
Yeah. The epitome of that is when Mac Brown won a title, but like Bob Stoops always won the Big 12, like in the
Yes.
2000s. Like,
Yeah. Go look at the Big 12 and the history of Big 12 titles. It's like OU won like 70 some odd percent of them. No one ever dominated a conference in any conference in the history of college football the way OU dominated the Big 12.
yeah, like you said, they're a blue blood, and this is not it's not blue blood behavior.
No.
That's the most concerning part of it all. Well, that's going to be something I'm going to follow for sure. Anything else before we get on out of here?
No, keep it shorter today. I'll have me on again, one more time before the season starts. I'm sure there's going to be some storylines. We'll take a look at those week one games. Look, we're 4 Saturdays away from Iowa State, Kansas State, right?
Yes,
Yeah, that's so exciting.
incredible.
That's so exciting. The line came down, by the way, for people who are, it was at 3.5. It's now at 3. So,
Ooh, interesting. Well,
and I, just like I told everyone, that Ohio State Texas line, more and more books are now coming to Ohio State 2.5. And for those of you who want Texas, your ability to get them at +3 is shrinking by the day. So go get it if that's what you want.
absolutely. Well, make sure to follow him. Link to his channels in the description. Well, actually, not to the description, but the pinned comment, or you can search him up on YouTube, Baldfather Bets. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll have you on before the season begins and, of course, during the season.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you can get notified when we do more guest interviews and also just daily college football content.